There are moments in life when the ordinary fabric of reality feels thin, when the noise of the world cannot drown out the quiet whisper inside you. That whisper is not random. It is the call of your deeper self, a self that has been waiting patiently for you to pause long enough to listen. Perhaps you've felt it in the sudden restlessness that creeps into your evenings, or in the strange dissatisfaction that lingers even after accomplishments that were supposed to bring you joy. That unease is not a flaw. It is a signal. It is life itself pulling you toward a truth you've long ignored. The unseen self does not announce itself with fireworks. It comes softly, in subtle dissonances. It is the tension between the person you pretend to be and the one you know you could become. And the reason you are hearing this message now is because you can no longer outrun that tension. The persona you built, the roles you play, the mask you wear, has served its purpose. It helped you navigate the expectations of the world. But there is a cost to wearing a mask too long, the suffocation of your own essence. And the deeper part of you, the one that knows why you are here, is tired of suffocating. This is not about abandoning your responsibilities or discarding the life you've built. It is about aligning what you show the world with what you know in your soul. The call of the unseen self is not a demand for recklessness. It is an invitation to authenticity. That authenticity will not make your life easier. In fact, it may complicate things at first, but it will make your life real. And real is what your soul is starving for. Think about the moments in your past when you felt alive. Not just happy, not just comfortable, but truly alive. Those flashes were glimpses of your deeper self breaking through. Maybe it was in the middle of a creative act when time dissolved. Maybe it was in a conversation where you finally spoke the truth instead of the polite answer. Maybe it was in solitude staring at the night sky when you realized you were both insignificant and infinite. Those moments are not random. They are breadcrumbs leading you back to yourself. The fact that you are here, listening, proves that your unseen self is stirring. You didn't come across these words because of coincidence. The same way a seed breaks its shell before it grows, something inside you is breaking now. That breaking is not destruction. It is the beginning of becoming. And while it may feel uncertain, even frightening, it is exactly what must happen for you to step into your next chapter. Your deeper self does not speak in language. It speaks in resonance. That pressure you feel in your chest, that sense that you are meant for more, that impatience with the surface-level distractions of life, these are its words. The call is not asking for instant answers. It is asking for your attention. If you ignore it, the dissonance will grow louder. But if you listen, you will find that life itself begins to conspire in your favor. You are standing at the edge of something immense, not because you demanded it, but because your unseen self has decided it is time. The only question is whether you will answer the call. Every one of us carries a shadow, not the kind cast by the sun, but the unseen collection of thoughts, impulses, and truths we've been taught to hide. From childhood, you were given a map of what was acceptable. You were told which parts of yourself deserved love and which parts needed to be buried. So, you learned to smile when you wanted to scream, to nod when you wanted to resist, to bury desires that didn't fit the mold. Over time, those exiled pieces of you formed what we call the shadow, the hidden self that waits behind the door of your consciousness. Here's the truth. The shadow does not disappear because you ignore it. It does not dissolve because you've convinced others it isn't there. It grows. It watches. It waits for the moment when silence is no longer possible. And right now, that moment is upon you. The uneasiness in your life, the repeated conflicts, the subtle self-sabotage, they are not accidents. They are your shadow knocking. You may think the shadow is your enemy because it brings discomfort, but discomfort is not destruction, it is revelation. That anger you repress, that jealousy you pretend you never feel, that fear you cover with bravado, those are not weaknesses to be eradicated. They are parts of you that demand acknowledgement. Like a child who has been ignored too long, they act out. not to ruin your life, but to remind you they exist. The paradox is this: the parts of yourself you fear most often hold the greatest power. The very anger you suppress might be the fire you need to set boundaries. The envy you deny might reveal what your soul truly desires. The fear you run from might contain the wisdom of caution and protection. But when you exile these forces, they twist into shadows operating unconsciously, controlling your behavior from the dark. You don't escape them by denial, you only give them more control. Imagine standing before a closed door knowing something waits behind it. You can bolt it shut, but the knocking will continue. Or you can open it, face what's inside, and discover that what you feared was not a monster, but a misunderstood fragment of yourself. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to complete you. The reason this moment feels so heavy, so unavoidable, is because the shadow at your door is demanding recognition. Life has a way of cornering us until we have no choice but to face what we've avoided. If you feel like your old strategies aren't working, if you feel chased by the same lessons in different disguises, it's because the shadow has decided it's time. And here is the invitation. Open the door. Not recklessly, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, what am I most afraid to admit? What patterns keep repeating in my relationships, in my work, in my inner dialogue? Behind those questions lies the shadow, and behind the shadow lies your liberation. Because until you face the shadow, you will always feel divided. But when you embrace it, you reclaim the power that was always yours. Look closely at your life, and you will notice a strange rhythm. The same arguments repeating in different relationships, the same frustrations resurfacing in new jobs, the same doubts emerging whenever you attempt something greater. These are not coincidences. They are patterns, psychological loops woven into the fabric of your existence. And until you recognize them, they will hold you captive, like invisible chains. A pattern begins quietly. A belief, often planted in childhood, becomes a lens through which you interpret the world. Perhaps you learned early that you must please others to be loved, or that success is only earned through relentless struggle, or that expressing emotion makes you weak. Those lessons harden into assumptions, and assumptions become habits. Before long, the pattern runs your life automatically, like a script you didn't write but keep performing. The danger of patterns is not just their repetition, it is their invisibility. You don't question them because they feel like reality itself. If every time you reach for intimacy you pull away at the last second, you might convince yourself love is impossible. If every time you near success you sabotage your progress, you might conclude you are destined to fail. But the truth is harsher and more liberating. You are not cursed. You are simply repeating what you refuse to examine. The unconscious does not disappear when ignored. It reveals itself in cycles. The job that drains you, the partner who mirrors your wounds, the financial struggle that reappears just when you thought you'd escaped. It is all the same story retold with new actors. Life will keep staging the play until you finally step off the stage and ask, why do I keep attracting the same script? Recognition is the first act of freedom. When you begin to see the pattern, you create distance between yourself and the loop. You realize that the universe is not punishing you. It is showing you the wound you've carried into every arena. And wounds, when seen, can be healed. But here is the difficult truth. Breaking patterns is not about willpower alone. You cannot simply force yourself to act differently while the underlying belief remains intact. You must go deeper, to the root of the story you keep telling yourself. Ask, when did I first feel this? Who taught me this version of love, of success, of worthiness? Often the origin lies in moments you barely remember, an offhand comment, a rejection, a silence that cut deeper than words. When you trace the pattern to its source, something remarkable happens. What once felt like fate reveals itself as conditioning, and conditioning can be unlearned. You realize you do not have to repeat the story. You can write a new one. This is the gift hidden in your frustration. Every recurring struggle is not proof of weakness, but proof of opportunity. It is your life giving you another chance to wake up, to step outside the loop, and to finally live beyond the pattern. The chains holding you are not locked. They are illusions maintained by repetition. The moment you see them clearly, they begin to dissolve. Life is not random noise. Beneath the surface of daily events, there is a hidden order, a language that does not use words, but speaks through symbols. Dreams, synchronicities, repeating numbers, unexpected encounters. These are not accidents. They are messages. The problem is not that life doesn't communicate. The problem is that we have forgotten how to listen. Think about your dreams. Every night, your unconscious paints images more honest than your waking thoughts. A falling dream may not simply be about fear. It may symbolize your loss of control, your refusal to surrender, or your resistance to change. A stranger in your dream may not be a stranger at all, but a fragment of your own psyche trying to make itself known. We brush these dreams aside because they feel strange or inconvenient, yet they carry truths that logic alone cannot reach. The same is true in waking life. Have you ever noticed a symbol repeating itself in your experience? A certain animal, a phrase, a piece of music that seems to follow you around? The rational mind dismisses this as coincidence, but coincidence is often the camouflage of meaning. The universe does not speak to us in straight lines. It speaks in patterns, in metaphors, in symbols that pierce deeper than explanation. Imagine walking through your life as though it were a storybook. Every character, every obstacle, every moment of joy or loss, each is a symbol. The friend who betrayed you is not just a person. They are a mirror reflecting your need for boundaries. The opportunity you lost was not simply bad luck. It was life teaching you that timing matters as much as effort. Even illness, as cruel as it feels, often arrives as a symbolic messenger, urging you to slow down, to reconnect, to confront what you've ignored. Symbols are bridges between the conscious and unconscious. They bypass the rigid structures of logic and touch the deeper layers of the psyche. When you begin to see them, you realize that life is not a sequence of meaningless events. It is a conversation. The question is whether you are listening, and here lies the challenge. The symbolic language of life does not translate easily. It requires patience, openness, and humility. You cannot demand a direct explanation, but you can pay attention. You can keep a journal of dreams, notice repeating themes, and ask yourself what feelings arise when a symbol appears. Over time, a dialogue emerges. The more you listen, the clearer the voice becomes. When you ignore symbols, life turns up the volume. The whispers of dreams become the disruptions of reality. But when you pay attention, something extraordinary happens. You begin to realize that nothing is wasted. Every encounter, every delay, every coincidence is part of the fabric of your becoming. The world around you is not silent. It is alive with meaning, waiting for you to engage. Once you learn to read the symbolic language of your life, you are no longer a passive participant. You are a conscious interpreter of your own unfolding story. Crisis. A word most of us dread. We see it as collapse, as disaster, as the end of what we knew. But what if crisis is not punishment? What if it is invitation? A doorway disguised as destruction? Think about the hardest moments of your life. The heartbreak that shattered you, the failure that humiliated you, the loss that left you breathless. At the time, it felt unbearable. You thought it was the end. But when you look back now, can you see how those very moments cracked something open? Painful, yes. But inside that pain was an invitation to grow, to shed what no longer served, to become someone you could not have imagined before. Crisis forces confrontation. It strips away illusions. When the job you clung to disappears, you are forced to ask who you are without that title. When a relationship ends, you are pushed to discover the parts of yourself you abandoned to keep it alive. When your health falters, you are reminded that time is not infinite and that the body you've ignored needs attention. Life will shake you, not out of cruelty, but because you would not move otherwise. Growth rarely happens in comfort. It happens when the structures we've built crumble, and we are left staring at the rubble. That rubble is not the end. It is the raw material of your becoming. Think of the caterpillar. Before it becomes a butterfly, it dissolves into chaos inside the cocoon. Its old form is destroyed completely. If you looked inside, you would see nothing but formless mush. That destruction is not failure. It is transformation. The same is true for you. Crisis is the cocoon. It dissolves the old self so that a new self can emerge. The sacredness of crisis lies in its ability to reveal what we truly are. Stripped of status, stripped of plans, stripped of certainty, what remains? That essence, that unshakable center, that is you. Crisis burns away what is temporary so that you can finally see what is eternal. But here is the mistake many make. They resist the invitation. They cling to the ashes instead of walking through the fire. They numb, they distract, they pretend. And in doing so, they miss the gift hidden in the wreckage. Crisis is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to dismantle what was never real. When you shift your perspective, everything changes. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this calling me toward?" That question transforms pain into initiation. It turns despair into direction. Every crisis, no matter how brutal, carries within it a seed of wisdom, of strength, of clarity. If you plant it, if you nurture it, if you allow it to take root, it will grow into something extraordinary. But the choice is always yours. Will you see crisis as curse or as invitation? The sacred invitation of crisis is this. It demands your rebirth. Every true transformation begins not in the light but in the darkness, not in triumph but in collapse. Before there is ascent, there must be descent. Before a new self emerges, the old self must dissolve. This is the law of transformation, and though it terrifies us, it is the path of every human soul that dares to evolve. Darkness is not the enemy. Darkness is the womb of becoming. Think of a seed buried underground. It does not sprout in the sunlight first. It is pressed into soil, hidden, covered, stripped of the old shell that once protected it. Only in that burial, in that unseen struggle, does life break open. The seed must crack before the stem can rise. Without descent into soil, there is no ascent toward sky. The same is true for us. Our descents, the heartbreak, the depression, the failures, the nights when we question our worth, these are not detours. They are the necessary dissolving of who we were. The self you cling to cannot carry you into the future that is waiting. That self must dissolve. That identity must shatter. That shell must crack. This is why the darkest seasons of life often feel unbearable, because what is dying is not just circumstance, it is your old self. The ambitions, the attachments, the illusions, they begin to collapse. And in that collapse, you feel lost. You feel stripped of direction. But hear this. Being lost is not the end. It is the sign you are on sacred ground. The descent is not punishment. It is preparation. The ground of your despair is the soil of your rebirth. Without it, you would cling forever to the shallow comforts of yesterday. Without it, you would never touch the depth of strength that only darkness can reveal. Remember this. The night always comes before the dawn. No one sees the sun without walking through shadow. The butterfly does not soar without first being liquefied in the cocoon. The phoenix does not rise without first turning to ash. And you cannot ascend without first descending. But descent is not forever. The darkness is not eternal. It is a passage, a crucible, a refining fire. If you stay with it, if you resist the urge to numb or escape, if you allow yourself to dissolve fully, something extraordinary happens. The dawn breaks, the light returns, and when it does, you rise not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. Do not curse the darkness. Do not run from it. Enter it. Sit with it. Let it strip you, for it is only in that sacred descent that you discover the strength to ascend, and when you do, you will rise not fragile but unbreakable, not lost, but found, not the same, but but transformed. Freedom is not escape. It is not running from the parts of yourself you don't want to face. It is not numbing, denying, or pretending. True freedom is found in integration, in the union of your hidden self and your visible self. The self you, present to the world, and the self you hide in silence must one day meet, or you will remain divided forever. Most people live in fragments. They show the polished surface, the smile, the title, the confidence, while burying the shadows, the fear, the shame, the doubt. On the outside, they look whole. On the inside, they are at war. And that inner war is the reason they feel restless, anxious, never enough. Wholeness cannot be faked. It must be lived. Integration begins when you stop running, when you stop escaping into distraction and turn inward to face what you've buried. Your anger, your grief, your mistakes, your unfulfilled desires. These are not enemies. They are exiled parts of you waiting to be acknowledged. When you bring them into the light, when you let them be seen, you do not become weaker, you become stronger. Because every piece of you carries power. Think of it this way. Your hidden self is like a locked vault. Inside it lies treasure, creativity, resilience, raw authenticity. But if you never open that vault, you will keep living with only half your power. Integration is the key. When the visible self shakes hands with the hidden self, the fracture heals. The energy you wasted keeping parts of yourself in exile is released. And suddenly you feel whole. But integration is not comfortable. It requires honesty. It requires sitting with the parts of yourself you'd rather deny. It requires forgiveness for what you've done and compassion for who you've been. Many resist this because they think power is found in perfection. But perfection is brittle. Integration is unbreakable. Freedom comes when the masks fall. When you no longer fear being seen for who you are, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, success and failure. This is not weakness, this is power, because a person who has nothing to hide cannot be controlled. A person who has united their hidden and visible selves cannot be shaken by opinion, rejection, or loss. They are free, not because they escaped themselves, but because they embrace themselves fully. This is the paradox. What you fear most within you is often the very thing that will liberate you. The shadow you avoid may hold your deepest gift. The pain you bury may contain your greatest wisdom. Integration is the alchemy that turns wounds into weapons, shame into strength, and darkness into light. When you live integrated, you no longer live in halves. You walk as a whole being. You speak with authority. You move with authenticity. You love without fear. This is the freedom that cannot be given or taken. It can only be claimed. And it begins the moment you decide to stop escaping and start embracing all of who you are. Transformation is often misunderstood. People think it means becoming someone else, reinventing yourself from scratch, discarding everything you were. But the truth is different. Transformation is not about creating a new identity. It is about uncovering the one that was buried beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and expectation. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you always were. From the moment you were born, you carried within you an essence, pure, unshakable, authentic. But as you grew, the world began to cover it. Parents, teachers, society, all with good intentions or sometimes wounded intentions, taught you who to be. Be quiet, be strong, be successful. Don't show weakness. Don't dream too big. Fit in. Follow the rules. And little by little, you learn to trade your authenticity for acceptance. That trade came at a cost. You became fragmented, living as a version of yourself shaped by external approval rather than inner truth. You wore masks to survive, and maybe those masks worked. They got you the job, the relationship, the status. But deep down, you knew something was missing. You felt the ache of disconnection, not from others, but from yourself. The process of rebirth is not about adding anything new. It is about stripping away what was never yours. The expectations, the roles, the false identities, they fall like dead leaves. And what remains is not weakness. What remains is essence. What remains is you. This is why the birth of the authentic self often feels like death first. The death of illusions, the death of roles you've outgrown, the death of who you thought you had to be. And yes, that death is painful. But remember this, the pain does not signal loss, it signals freedom. Because in shedding the false, you reclaim the true. The authentic self does not need to prove anything. It does not chase validation. It does not conform out of fear. It simply is. When you live from this place, your choices align with your values, your voice carries weight, and your presence feels undeniable. People sense it, not because you're louder or flashier, but because authenticity radiates a quiet power that cannot be faked. This is the moment you stop searching for yourself outside, in relationships, in achievements, in possessions, and realize you've carried yourself within all along. It's not about arrival, it's about remembrance. The authentic you was never gone. It was only hidden. And here is the miracle. When you remember who you truly are, life aligns. Opportunities appear, not because you chase them, but because you resonate with them. Relationships deepen, not because you perform, but because you show up real. Freedom comes, not because you escaped, but because you finally came home to yourself. Kuai, birth of the authentic you is not a beginning, it is a return. And when you return, you discover the most powerful truth of all. You were never broken, never less, never unworthy. You were always whole. You simply had to remember.